Welcome back to Truck Tech. You know, we spend an awful lot of time talking about electrification and what's happening with it, including the pushback, of course, that we've seen of recent times. It's really important that we spend some time talking about some of the alternatives. And today we've got an opportunity to do that with a company, a startup really, called ClearFlame. ClearFlame's intent is to upfit older trucks and eventually new trucks with a technology that uses ethanol and perhaps a few other fuels to basically replace and reduce carbon emissions. It would definitely be a transition technology, but it's something that we're going to get a chance to talk to BJ Johnson, who's the co-founder and CEO of ClearFlame. BJ, thanks for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Hey, you know, this subject, and I have a background as we've talked, I have a
hmm
background in ethanol. I know a little bit about it from, again, my days at GM. I'm always telling the audience that I worked at GM. I don't have to say that anymore, but 20 years was a long time. Anyway, the interesting thing about that is that, you know, we went through the thing in ethanol in the 2000s where we were pushing E85 and we
hmm
were spending a lot of time looking at some things. A lot's changed really in the ethanol space. I'd like you to explain that. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, you're a swimmer and a serious one.
I am a swimmer, so I grew up in Seattle, did my undergrad and grad at Stanford in California. I was lucky enough to be able to swim at Stanford as a breaststroker, and also after Stanford. Spent some years on the U.S. national team, getting to go around the world competing for this country, which was a lot of fun, and I think set me up for the discipline required to lead a company like ClearFlame.
You know, it's funny when we talk about the discipline of an athlete, and especially you were a walk-on. I mean, which is amazing because I asked you if you were a scholarship athlete, and apparently yes, but not in swimming. So the idea that you know the discipline and the rigor really that it takes to be a top athlete, it does translate to something like this because you can't just have a few good days in this space.
Yeah, it's the discipline and rigor, like you said. But to your point, I think it's resiliency against the bad news and the bad times. It's no different in sports. You don't win every time. Not every day is a good day. Not every practice you achieve what you want to achieve. It's the same thing as a startup company. You have to be able to ignore the minor ups and downs and see the overall trajectory of where you're going and make sure that's going in the right direction.
Well, on a couple of measures and metrics, if you will, you're doing quite well. $50 million raised for this technology, and we're going to get, of course, into that. The technology itself a little more, but the fact that you have sort of persuaded a lot of the, I would say, noteworthy names, if not big names in the industry, Cummins and others, to work with you and to take a look at what you're doing, that speaks volumes already. Now, how old or new is the company? 2017.
Company was started in late 2016. We moved to the Chicago area in 2017. We had the chance to partner with Argonne National Lab. So a lot of support early on from the Department of Energy, the National Science Foundation, and getting the technology off the ground. Have a lot of big name clean tech investors behind us, folks like Clean Energy Ventures out of Boston, Breakthrough Energy Ventures, which is Bill Gates' money. You mentioned us as a potential transition technology. I think when ClearFlame was first getting started, people thought this might be a 5 to 7 year transition. And now today we're talking about the need for combustion liquid fuel platforms for at least 20 to 30 years. And frankly, I believe it's going to be longer than that. And so our mission behind ClearFlame, that we've been able to get both traditional incumbents and next generation clean tech investors behind, is let's start doing something about the carbon problem today, but in a way that also scales and becomes better even as we go into the future.
Mm-hmm. And this whole idea of scaling, I mean, that, when we talk about 3.5 or 4 million trucks on the road, we talk about turn cycles of 3 to 5 years. And at least for right now, you're kind of focusing on those trucks that are, coming off the second million miles, if you will, or maybe not million, but second 500,000 miles.
Precisely.
You've got now a business that basically is built on a lease basis. You want to explain how you did that? Basically, you're sort of soup to nuts, right?
Yeah, so when we were first starting the company, we thought we would be an engine technology provider to the OEMs. And I think as getting the company off the ground, we realized there was really an important role for a startup like ClearFlame, not just to try to work with OEMs, but to go directly to customers like ProTrans that piloted our truck and now been placing their orders, to show we can actually meet customer needs today. That model then involved to exploring maybe selling truck upfits. When people get in our truck, it drives like a diesel truck. There's not really that much to say about that. They know how to use a diesel truck technology. They wanted to know, how is the technology going to be fueled? How is it going to be maintained? And so in the process of setting customers up with service contracts for both fuel and maintenance, it made sense to bundle the truck into that. So now we basically lease the truck on a per mile basis. for whatever a fleet is paying for their diesel fuel, their diesel truck, and their maintenance today. We'll match that price point at parity, so no green premium, perhaps even a small discount. And for that, they get at least a 45% reduction in carbon with a fuel that is actually decarbonizing as fast or faster than the electrical grid.
Okay, we know you're not going to win over the California Air Resources Board with this. However, that's not really your target right now. You're not trying to get these into California, but Nebraska and Iowa and lots of places that are long haul states. I mean, these trucks, if it's not on a train, it has to go on a truck and it has to go along routes that you're looking at, right? Are you setting up then? I know you can use E85, 85% ethanol, but you really do run on 100% ethanol, right?
Yep, we use the regular denatured fuel ethanol blend stock E98. People call it different things, but what comes out of every ethanol plant in this country, well, we have 15 billion gallons of already nationally distributed. It's not at a lot of truck stops today. It's not really at any truck stops today, but we are actually deploying fuel depots. So we will work with a customer either at their location or at a third-party location to put a fuel tank, your basic liquid fuel tank, set them up with a fuel contract, and off they go. Yes, that is mostly in the Midwest today, Iowa, Nebraska, but we've got some traction in Texas. That's where ProTrans is based. Not a big, ethanol part of the country, but a huge area for trucking. And, I think it will eventually get into states like California. The choice that CARB really kind of sees today is, are they going to be an EV or are they going to be diesel? And if you care about the environment, well, that's really only one choice. ClearFlame, as we grow market awareness, people realize that there are other solutions out there. And I think that is a message that people will eventually get behind. It just takes some market education.
Well, there's some terminologies here. I mean, you're a truck as a service, basically. That's what you're pitching. You're going to do behind the fence fueling, essentially, if you put a tank in for, this denatured ethanol, and essentially you're going to be basically a turnkey operation, best as I can tell from what you're saying, anyway. What is it that you've done? And here's where we get into, I got to ask you for layman technology, but what is it that you're doing? It's only 5% parts changes, right?
Yeah, it is only 5% of the parts of the engine that have to change, and that's a large testament to how robust the diesel engine already is. The way you make ClearFlame work is you get the engine to elevate at a slightly higher temperature. Operate at a slightly elevated temperature. That's what allows you to burn non-traditional fuels like ethanol, but also things like green methanol, green ammonia, like you would as diesel. Most of the engine is already designed to be able to handle those temperatures. We have to redirect some air and exhaust flows. We have some different plumbing. It's a different set of fuel injectors, same shape on the outside, slightly different innards, and our proprietary controls package. But that's really all it takes to deliver identical performance, transient response, everything a user expects from their diesel engine, but running on a different fuel.
So the thing that really changed, some things changed with ethanol from when I was involved with it back then. We used to harden parts because of the higher temperatures and things like that. But you're saying that through diesel and through natural gas and things like that, that a lot of this is already in place.
Exactly. So much about what ClearFlame gets to do is building on what was done well before. As we started to get more natural gas into trucking, people already had to design things like exhaust seats and turbochargers for higher temperatures. We get to benefit from that. It took the ethanol sector, 10 years to get off the ground from a fuel infrastructure perspective. You're right, we're technically a behind the fence application today, although we're talking to a couple of the major truck stops about doing it at their location. But in that time, the fuel has not only become significantly cleaner than diesel in terms of carbon, significantly lower cost than diesel. It's the only alternative fuel out there that actually offers a discount to diesel, not a premium. And that's because of so much work that had been done since 2005, including the work you would have done at GM to grow the ethanol space. That is now a mature industry that we get to benefit from and that our customers get to benefit from.
Now, it's interesting because we also hear quite a bit these days. In fact, Volvo recently announced that they were going to start using hydrated vegetable oil, which is a form of renewable diesel. And we hear a lot more about renewable diesel. I think you've said, well, there's really not a lot of it out there, but it does seem to be gaining a fair amount of attention now. Are you a competitor to that, would you say?
You could argue we're a competitor. I still really view us as complementary, though. When you look at the strength of renewable diesel, it's a drop-in fuel. You don't have to change your engine to use it. But there is a cost to that. It's a fuel that is significantly more expensive than diesel. So yeah, you're not investing any money in your engine, but you're paying more money every mile you drive. If you're a short-range fleet that might only be putting on, 20, 30,000 miles a year, like, your average farmer, that makes sense. But if you're a long-haul over-the-road fleet that's putting 100,000 miles plus, as you and your readers know, the cost of owning one of these trucks is not the truck, it's the fuel.
Right.
So the lower cost fuel is going to win every time. And I think the other vision for ClearFlame is the reason why we developed this fuel adaptive platform is to use whatever fuels make the most techno-economic sense. You can get 4 times as much fuel energy from an acre of land making ethanol than you can biodiesel or renewable diesel. We can use the e-fuels, the hydrogen carriers of the future, like green methanol, green ammonia. The reason why Breakthrough Energy Ventures invested is because of the scalability of our solution. And again, I don't mean that as a knock on renewable diesel. I think every gallon of that we use is a good gallon. But if you really care about impact, that means you have to care about scale, and the scale of the fuels we use is absolutely unparalleled.
Well, I think some of the math equations that you described are pretty important here, and it's not something that the average driver is going to think about. It's probably not even something the fleet's going to think about. They're going to look at that bottom line again, that total cost of ownership. They're not going to ask you to, take apart what an acre of land is really worth in terms of the fuels. But you seem to have found something of a sweet spot.
Yeah, and it's because everything I'm talking about does ultimately translate into that bottom line. It is a lower cost fuel, and then therefore the TCO can be at parity or lower, even when you have to do that upfront conversion of the engine. That's one of the big powers of what we're doing. And we talk to fleets all the time, especially in the Midwest, like you're referring to, where it can be hard to find some of these other fuels like renewable diesel. It's something that maybe people don't necessarily have to understand the underlying physics or agriculture behind why that's true, but they see it in the price they have to pay for a fuel or where they can find that fuel.
Right.
And they can look around the world and see, or the country, and see ethanol at every fuel terminal out there at a price point that is significantly lower cost than diesel. And that's something that translates to everyone.
Okay, I want to go back to some of the finances for just a minute, because you've got about 50 employees. And I presume most of those are working on making even a better mousetrap than you have now. Is that accurate?
Yeah, our team is mostly engineers. A lot of good work went into making this product. Sort of 2 paths that are happening at the same time. There's the productization of this, supporting the early customers in the field, making sure we can be ready to scale up from a manufacturing sense, how we work with the supply chain. And then, there are people beginning to look at, what is that better mousetrap? How do we get ready for the emissions regulations that are coming into place in 2027 and beyond? How do we branch out into E85 and hydrous ethanol and other fuels? It's probably 2/3 productization, 1/3 thinking about future product as well.
Talking about the future, and these are never 100% fair questions. I'll ask it anyway. I know you're just getting started into scaling, basically, and it's very early. I mean, you have, is it 50 trucks this year? How many will you actually do this year?
We've got 6 on the road right now. We want to make sure we're giving the early customers the best experience we can get. So we're only going to do a tranche of another probably 10 or so trucks this year.
Okay.
Basically fully committed on those units with customers already. Next year, that's where we're going to be somewhere in the 100 to 150 more trucks, really making sure we do this the way an OEM would do it, which is customer experience, uptime of truck is everything. Not making the mistakes of some of the competitors of pushing too much product out too quickly and having too much downtime. We want to make sure the customer experience relative to what they're used to with diesel is seamless.
Sure.
And that means a modest number of trucks to really prove what we're capable of.
Truly a drop in the bucket if we were talking about drop-in fuels. This is a drop in the bucket. Is this the kind of business, BJ, that you could see an OEM or someone actually buying, and you guys just become sort of a part of another company? We just saw this in a little different area, but with truck wings, for example. Conmet picked them up and is now putting their marketing muscle behind them, things that you probably don't have a lot of opportunity to do right now. Is this a potential future for you?
Absolutely. You're right. We're starting modest, and like I said, a drop in the bucket. Dozens now, hundreds next year, scaling up towards thousands after that. But there's no reason this can't be tens of thousands of trucks across multiple OEM makes in the future. The reason why we're going directly to customers right now is to prove to the whole world, like Tesla had to do for EVs, that this market exists and people are excited about it, that it is a product that you can make money selling. And we're more than happy to partner with OEMs across a range of applications, not just trucks, but also off-road equipment, to be able to build new engines this way, not just, as you said, that second 500,000 miles.
Okay. Cummins is now looking, I think they've got a name for it called Helms, I believe.
Yes,
That's what they call
yes.
it. It's what they're calling their fuel agnostic engines. does this make a good fit for something like that? I'm always trying to sell things to Cummins. I don't know why. I get no finder's fee for that. But I really wonder, because I've mentioned certain things to them over time, and it's like, yeah, we take a look at that. But I'm wondering, I mean, are they, as an engine maker, and especially one that is very committed to the idea of 2050, but not getting there all at once. They're not all into one technology. They're looking at lots of things. Does that make sense?
Certainly Cummins. I think, all the other OEMs as well. I think everyone's waking up to the fact that we need more than just EV, or even frankly more than just EV and hydrogen to meet not just our climate goals, but customer needs. When you compare us to the Helm technology, this is truly a diesel engine. It's not a spark ignition conversion, so it's going to have all of the same efficiencies and torque points and everything that you expect from an actual diesel engine platform. I think there's a huge market opportunity out there for not just using alternative fuels. Everyone knows that exists, but using alternative fuels in a way that the driver doesn't know they're not driving a diesel. And we're the only technology out there that does that, and I think that's something that any OEM can get behind.
All right, let's take a little walk here. I want you to show us again. I'm going to caution you. You can't go too deep here. I know you've got degrees that I've never even heard of, but it's really important that we explain what you've got. So let's go do that. So, BJ, it's important for us to kind of understand at some level what it is that's going on here. Maybe you can kind of take us, left to right, or my left, your right, from what's happened under the hood there.
So first is to take a step back, actually. If you're looking under the hood of a ClearFlame truck, in this case it's an international truck with a modified Cummins engine inside of it, you will recognize almost all of the parts you're used to seeing in your regular diesel truck. It's all the same block and head and turbochargers. Really the only things you have to change to make ClearFlame work is it's a higher temperature combustion process. You were making fun of the degrees earlier, but my degree is basically in if you get it hot enough, anything burns. That's how this technology works. There's diversion of airflows, so the hot air coming out of the turbocharger gets redirected in the engine. Same thing with exhaust. Rather than cooled exhaust gas circulation, EGR, we use hot EGR. That's all the temperature that you need. There's a traditional diesel cold start package, where you have to turn the key, wait for a little coil to go off, and then crank your engine. Injectors that are modified to use low carbon fuels like ethanol. And then our proprietary control package, we have to replace the ECU, which not only allows us to deliver that seamless experience to diesel, all of the same torque curves, it allows us to meet EPA requirements in terms of emissions reductions, and also very accurately report how much a user reduced their carbon. We have a partnership with Gevo. They have a platform called Verity, which is the only solution in the world that allows you to have very accurate reporting of your fuel environmental impact, your fuel carbon intensity. That combined with our ECU allows us to tell a fleet exactly how much they reduce their carbon on a per mile driven.
And that's something that has become really important now, because so much of the push for sustainability is coming from the customers to the OEM saying, do this for me so that I can report to my customers that we're greener, if not green.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. To be very blunt about it, there's still a lot of greenwashing out there. There's a lot of solutions where, how do you know whether you use petroleum diesel or biodiesel or renewable diesel? Again, no knock on any of those fuels, but customers are asking, no, don't tell me what I might be getting. Tell me precisely what I'm using and how good it is for the environment. And that ability to track full well to wheel, I guess it's field to wheels in this case, along with exactly how much fuel is consumed, is a major differentiator in this market.
Sure. We taped this episode at the ACT Expo in Las Vegas. And what's really interesting is that the show hasn't even started yet in real. It will get started a little later. But what's fascinating is we picked a technology that isn't what most people are here to talk about. BJ, thanks so much for being with us and being part of Truck Tech.
Thank you for the opportunity, Alan. Very much appreciated.